Fintech Chatter, brought to you by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search. Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and thanks for coming back to part 2 of the special podcast that I did with Simon Lee, where he actually interviews me. If you didn't have enough in the first episode and you've come back for more, thank you very much. If you're stumbling on this episode and you haven't checked out the first one, please have a look because this one will make a lot more sense. But before we go into this next episode, I've actually invited Simon back. Simon and I had such a fantastic chat and so many synergies between our businesses that we've actually got an exciting announcement. And Simon, over to you. I'm going to let you make that announcement.
Yes, well, Tier 1 is now our first official partner, so really excited to announce that and to be working with you, Dexter. We've known each other for a number of years now. I feel like we're mates, even though we don't hang outside of work environments, but as you said, we share the same vision, right? Which is how do we help more people in the fintech community succeed? Very similar ways. You find obviously amazing executives to help the business execute. We do it by helping them to get more done with less by building out remote technology teams with a whole focus on helping founders and scale ups be successful. So I'm really excited to be working with you. Known you for a number of years. Love what you talk about in terms of hiring.
Yeah, look, I'm absolutely buzzed by it, and kind of similar reasons. I've seen firsthand the impact that you guys have had on businesses like Friday, and supporting the founders that I kind of look at and see as the people that really the industry needs to support and elevate. Look, timing wise as well. This feels like we're at a critical juncture. Capital's very hard to come by. We're seeing Series A rounds back to $6-7 million. We're really clear about who we work with. Can you tell us kind of what stage business typically you get involved in? What kind of digital businesses are they?
It's been everything from startups to scale-ups to even companies like Treasury Wine Estates, right? So we have 50 people in Treasury Wine Estates and about 12 in Accolade Wines. So, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. But generally where we find we end up getting the business is where we can provide value. And it may be capital raising. It may be looking at their architecture where, Simon Jones, my partner, is the CTO of Assembly and my co-founder, and then he can come in and help architect things. Sometimes it's also other things where we kind of, there's compliance and risk and payment issues that we can come and solve. And part of it is, yes, it's getting more done with less, but it's also we come in and we love fintech. So we end up giving a lot of our time away for free. So it's not about us helping you to build a remote team. It's us coming in there passionately wanting to help. And that's generally how we end up winning the businesses is sometimes, we end up getting Friday because I sat there every week with Michael kind of pumping his tires when he's trying to do his original capital raise, right? And then we started building a team with him before he did his capital raise to get him off the ground. And, they've turned into a massive success story. But it's just a passion for the industry. It's just the way we make money is the remote teams. And we feel the remote teams are a massive win because you do get to do things with significantly less capital, but equally as much, it's also our advice as founders that's been through the meat grinder, and the advice we can actually help along the way and to make sure that, we're not making mistakes in the way we actually deploy that cash. And
look, that kind of what you've hit is the nail on the head. And I think the biggest problem that we've seen, I've seen from the kind of startup community is the amount of pitch decks and ideas and founders who, they're a little green around the gills and they might have a great idea. But the reality is that you can have all the capital in the world, but if you don't have the talent to build it, the vision never happens. And I think that has been, the biggest stumbling block that I've seen of anybody being able to build their vision. is you have to have access to the technical expertise and talent to be able to build that. That's why I'm so excited about this partnership, because you've been there, you've seen it, you've done it, you've made all the mistakes, right? And you've seen how it should be done as well. Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah. And you know what? It's exactly that, right? You go out there, you raise some money, you've got to make it go as far as you can. Hiring right at the start is absolutely critical. Those critical hires, if you get them wrong, cost you heavily. By the time you actually raise the money, generally you're quite tired after that. And then the next thing is you need to get your team in place. And generally by the time you've actually finally got your team in place, you need to go do a round again. So you know, remote teams are very complementary to onshore. And I think things like Friday and Little Birdie and Zai and everyone, they all have an onshore team, but they also have a really solid remote team, and it's a really good mix, especially in this environment.
And this is where I think you've been particularly successful as well, as the augmentation rather than replacement of onshore resources.
Correct. And because I think a successful offshore team is actually a remote team is actually, and we've got that inside where the product manager is actually running the onshore devs. So when I think that's success is when you've got it where it's not, hey, we've got the remote team and the onshore guys are running the remote, pushing the work out to them. It's a successful remote team is they're actually running onshore, but definitely a mix helps and works. You can't see it too much one way or the other.
Well, Simon, it's been great to invite you back. I think we're really looking forward to the partnership, and let's let our listeners listen to part 2 of our podcast that we did together.
Probably part of your reward is the success of actually finding the right person, but there's obviously other things that you get out of it, like seeing that person flourish in an organisation, like you were talking about Revolut before, helping them set up in a country. What's these other things that you get rewards out of other than helping, fill roles?
I've got to be honest, right? Like the first year that I did this, I used to get a buzz out of finding somebody a job.
Same here.
Right?
I still do.
Right? But I haven't had that buzz in about 24 years. I think the thing that does get me a buzz, right, is when you, not so much finding somebody a job, but when you get a brief from a client and they kind of come to me with this job spec, and when you talk them through it, you then get them to think differently about how they're trying to solve this problem.
Right.
And you kind of reflect in the time, and by the time that they hire somebody, that person's very different to what they'd first kind of come up with. And the client then will say, wow, you've completely nailed this.
Yeah.
And it's by just putting the right person in front of them.
And getting their expectations to the right level too.
Yeah. And not just kind of helping them reframe, what the problem is that they're trying to fix.
Do you find on those house shows then, how they go there and they show them, we love, what's it, The Place in the Sun?
Right.
We love it because I'm going to move to Europe soon, right? I'm just going to do it one day. Just go live on a Greek island and, it's a complete sea change. But, they go from different place to get their expectation right. Finding a house, they have to show them different variations. Do you find that with finding the right person is showing them something?
Sort of. So the approach I've got is first of all, it's using principles that they're already familiar with and they're using in their business. So when it comes to the briefing, we go first principles, like let's forget the job spec. Why am I here? Right?
Yeah.
What's the problem that you've got?
Yeah, right.
Right.
So you're almost...
Yeah, what's the problem that you're trying to solve, right? Yeah. Let's go back to first principles. Okay, so, how does hiring this person solve that problem?
Right.
All right, well, okay, so that's now solved within the first 90 days. What next?
That's interesting because that's never in the JD.
Yeah.
Those first 2 points are never in the JD.
Well, what I've found, Simon, is actually in 50% or almost 50% of cases where somebody will reach out to say, hey, can we chat about a brief? At the end of it, they decide not to hire.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or right, okay.
Because
why's that?
There's either somebody already in the business that they can give an opportunity to. So oftentimes what you find with hiring is it's not strategic. It's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. We've got funding. We need to grow. Somebody's resigned. We need to replace them.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sleeping at night. I need somebody to help me sleep better, right?
Yeah.
But what you find is a lot of the problems that when you speak with them, a lot of them can be solved through other means than hiring somebody, or there could be short-term problems. Yeah. You could outsource. Oftentimes, I'll put outsourcing as the first.
Get a contractor.
Get a contractor in, or bring in somebody 2 days a week for 3 months, and then see where it lands. So that's kind of the first instance, and then once we define actually, well, there is a problem you need to hire. It's then, what does success look like, right? 3 years time, 2 years time, 1 year's time, 6 months time, first 90 days, and kind of put those, them in place, and then start to take principles around design thinking. And okay, well, what is the ideal candidate look like?
As a consultant here,
putting
out a statement of work of what the person needs to achieve. And so we then go through, okay, well, what would you do in your business? What does your ideal customer look like? Right. Well, what does the ideal candidate look like? 3 or 4 different archetypes. What the experiences that they would have had? What type of business would they have worked in? What's the journey that they've been on? If you're looking to scale to 2,000 people, well, pointless finding somebody who's done 1 to 50. If we need to find somebody who's going to take 200 to 2,000. So where do you what stage they're at?
So kind of all of those things then go into the whole briefing process. And so what you find is that there's this just nudging. It's very much like enterprise software sales, where it might take 6 months to kind of get the right conclusion. And what you're doing is you bring in all these different stakeholders together, trying to understand what their big problems are, what they're uncomfortable about, how do we get you comfortable. Transparency as well, because, it's like, if it's not going to work, you want to get to a quick no.
I'm obviously building remote teams, but have a similar thing. We have a big team of recruiters and get really heavily involved in the recruitment process. And where I find there's a breakdown is upfront, people need to put that investment in. Do you find everyone is prepared to put that investment in time upfront to work with you to really get those requirements sussed out properly?
Well, I think because the level that I work at, they have to. But if you're going to ask me, if I was working at a junior level, no, they wouldn't. And I think this is fundamentally why recruitment's broken. I personally don't believe there's a talent shortage. Right. We've got nearly 8 billion people in the world, the most advanced we've ever been in the history of humanity, right? And every single one of them you can access immediately and you can find them. How is there a talent shortage, right? There isn't. I think the biggest talent shortage is internally, right? And if you look at the whole recruitment process, so the interview process that nearly every business follows was developed 100 years ago, right? The organization structure that pretty much every organization has was developed in 1923 by GM Motors.
There you
go. Right?
I didn't know that.
Psychometric testing was developed in the 1960s.
There you
go. The
go.
resume was developed by Leonardo da Vinci in the mid 1400s. Right. So we're using a technology that is over 600 years old, right? And that is still the way that people apply for a job. Fundamentally, the whole thing is broken. The reason why businesses don't want to invest time in a briefing is because it's painful. Right? So if you get
the hiring often because they're in pain because they're really busy.
Right.
So then they go, I just take this and hire.
And then you get the form from HR, kind of put in what competencies you need. You're like, I don't know I've just got this problem. And I think that's why, the briefing process that I go through is so effective, because forget that. Just tell me about the big problem that you're trying to fix.
Even the job description that someone writes, they often just go find something on the internet, things they don't talk about. This is the problem. This is where I need things like the briefing you said.
So that briefing, right, of what does success look like? That makes the job spec, right? So we call it an opportunity description. And then when you go out to people and you approach them, because you have to, right? Because if I'm putting that up, I'm going to get I'm going to be paying to basically piss off 99.9% of people who apply. And in fact, I probably won't even find anybody who's going to be relevant. So that going out and approaching people with an opportunity description, I can then present that and say, hey, look, this is what you get to do.
Right. And probably get a lot of people more interested.
Yeah, because they want to build something, right?
Solving. Oh, great. That's the problem that you need to solve.
But this is the most valuable thing, right?
You've heard it here first, guys. No more JDs. It's now an opportunity description.
Yeah, opportunity descriptions.
You need to put a template up there, mate, and share it with people.
Yeah, look, it's really simple, right? I mean, it's really simple. But this is the most valuable part of that process, right? Is that the most effective recruitment tool that I know of is self-selection. Right.
What do you mean by that?
So if I call you about an opportunity and I'm really transparent and I present that opportunity description, go, this is what you get to do, and this is what they want to do, but here's where they're at, and here's how much funding they've got, and here's what the people are like, and here's all right. You may go, you know what? Thanks for thinking of me, but it's not the right time.
Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Unfortunately, what happens is, the recruiter will then turn around and go, oh, but Simon.
Come on.
You're an idiot. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. That self-selection is the most effective recruitment tool I know.
Right.
Unfortunately, whether they be internal or external recruiters, their tendency is to try and convince people the wrong person that you should go for it, right?
Yeah.
And that's why things fall over at the 11th hour. Yeah. And having gone through that pain myself and then have my own business going, I can't afford that pain.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It is, right? And my brand, everything else, I can't afford that pain.
Yeah.
So I need to just be transparent and upfront and not have a strategy of hope, but just be really clear and keep pushing that all the way through the process.
And so when someone self-selects themselves and says, this sounds really interesting and this sounds really good, and they're a match, that's when
the magic happens. Yeah. That's like, client will be like, where did you find this person from?
Right. On that, what last year, and we had 50 open roles we were trying to hire for offshore, right? And it was just and we weren't getting the applications in, and we made it really simple for everyone to apply, and everyone was hunting on LinkedIn and Naraki in India, couldn't find people. Now we've got the opposite problem. We're getting 12,000 applications for a job, and people are lying on the auto disqualify questions, and we're putting videos in front, and we're doing all sorts of things in front because we can't get through the resumes in time to find the quality candidates. Are you finding that as well in the change?
So I stopped advertising 3 years ago.
Right.
And the reason why was one of the problems that you have with advertising and recruitment, right? Recruitment is a process that is successful because of exclusion.
Right. What do you mean by that?
Well, you have to exclude people, right? Like to find the right person, you have to exclude everybody else.
Yes.
So the fewer people that you have to exclude, the more efficient the process is, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the way that we go about advertising for jobs is what happened in the 1920s and the Great Depression, right? And you'd go and advertise a job and you'd have a queue 3 miles long of people all putting in their resume, and you'd pick one. So I think that the most effective way of going and finding people has been, first of all, you have to be really clear about what you're looking for, right? And I think this is why recruitment processes don't work, because you don't take the time up front to define clearly what you're looking for. And the reason that you don't do that is because it's too painful. And the reason it's too painful is because you're being asked to kind of try and create something that's not actually relevant, right? So core competencies, well, who has ever looked to hire somebody who's just competent, right?
Yes.
You want somebody who's going to knock it out of the park, right?
This is a problem that happens in engineering, though, is you get a bunch of applicants in there, and what they want is what you touched on before, right? In a smaller business, you want people that can get shit done.
Yeah.
But then they want them to get 95% on a coding test. And the perfect coders are the people that just sit there, get given a Jira card, and they pump the code out, right?
Yeah.
And that's what they're good at. And so their code will be perfect. But if you want someone to go join a startup like that as a coder, you don't want that guy that gets 95% on their coding.
One of the... I remember...
It's a problem we have with our clients sometimes.
I remember early in my recruitment career, so I think this was like 2001, and we do contact center recruitment.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult back then, right? It's not changed. It's a high volume, really high turnover. Trying to find the right types of people was just really difficult. And we put together this, it was like a world first, right? Assessment center. It was just amazing. It was all these series of tests and assessments and role plays, and it was amazing, right? And I think we hit all of the numbers. The client was absolutely blown away. The talent were fantastic. We're getting really high caliber people. Yeah. And, we're all celebrating, like, it was in the press and all this stuff, and, industry press about how radical it was. And like 3 to 6 months later, the wheels came off.
And what was that?
So people just started leaving in droves.
Right.
And so what turned out, right, is like the assessments were fantastic, right? And we were identifying the very best people, like really smart, articulate, highly intelligent people. And we're sitting in a call center 8 hours a day, just dealing with shit and complaints,
Interesting,
right?
yeah.
And they just couldn't take it. And so they were like, it's just not, stimulating enough. And so what I learned from that was that oftentimes you just have to look for in fact, in every instance, it's the right person, right? And the right person isn't, knocking it out the park. Like you said, the right person is just happy to sit there with a set of headphones on and crunch through code. Yeah. And that's what you're going to get from them. And if you expect them to be an entrepreneur and to be, all these other things, that's not what you're going to get.
Yeah, I very rarely see an entrepreneur that writes perfect code.
Yeah.
In fact, they
but
can probably write 5 or 6 languages.
There's a polarity in, the kind of behaviors and kind of unique talents that those people have. What's the big problem you're trying to solve, right?
Correct.
Like,
you want perfect code, or
this is the interesting thing with recruitment, right? It's like it's the only part of business that I know that
you're like a negotiator.
But it's like where you're presented with a problem, and you think somehow that you've got the right to also have the solution exactly how you want it.
Yeah.
Right? If you've got a problem in business, you just take whatever the solution is to fix it.
Yeah.
Whereas in recruitment, you go, no, but the solution has to look like this, and they've got to have that and this and this. And it's not even relevant to solving the problem.
Yeah.
And I think this is where, recruitment and hiring is way more complex than it needs to be. And the reason why is that all of the things that we're using, the tools that we're using, the processes, the systems, they're all over 100 years old. Nothing has been updated, and I keep seeing these technology solutions coming out. Yeah, it's cool, right? A super app for hiring, but you haven't fixed any of the fundamental issues. So now what you're doing is you're just amplifying more and more the problems, right? And it's but they all get heralded as technology is the solution when it's actually, we're not actually fixing the fundamental problem.
Yeah, but it's interesting, right? You can put these tools in place, and it's almost like productivity tools too, right? Yeah. You can put these tools in place, but the tool doesn't solve the problem. It's actually these other things you're talking about. I love the opportunity brief. Is that's what it's called?
Yeah, opportunity description.
I love that. People need to adopt that, I think.
Yeah.
What type of roles do you generally end up hiring for?
Typically, businesses that I'm working with, they're what I would call scale up. So if it's an Aussie business, they're going to be Series B plus.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're helping them kind of really scale and become an enterprise.
Right.
I just don't see the value of somebody doing what I do at a startup level. You shouldn't be, one, wasting your capital on my fees.
Yeah. And
two, I think you kind of got to bring in people that are known to you at a senior level.
Yeah.
Because you have to have that trust. And what I've found, Simon, is, you kind of bring in external people at that level and it just doesn't work.
You just need this tight unit at the start.
And
look, it's like Series B, then you need to get serious.
It's your baby, right? And you kind of, the time when it's not your baby is usually Series B, when you've given away a lot of your equity, and you got like the investors going, Simon, mate, it's time for you to be Chief Innovation Officer.
Yeah,
like step aside, right?
Well, they
come and join the board.
And they go, you need a really good COO.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Because you're out there, you're good at selling the story, but you need just someone operationally to. That's what happens to the startup.
Yeah, and so kind of that's usually where I get involved. Is kind of now the founder really needs the kind of real bench strength. Yeah,
and
so it's typically people that have been there, seen it, and done it.
Yeah. So I already know that you don't do the engineers and stuff like that, but would you do CTOs or engineering managers?
Yeah.
You do a CTO?
Yeah, like
so more of that kind of senior
so all
management.
that C-suite exec stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously, like, kind of, earn my corn recruiting at every level, and pretty much, I think it's certainly in corporate, I've recruited every single discipline there is, right? Like, legal, ops, HR,
24
sales.
years now? 24 years?
20, be 25 next year.
So you obviously know what you're doing.
Look, I mean, it's, kind of one of the frustrations that I've got is with the industry, the kind of the operating model. And again, I think it's one of the big challenges for the industry is it's not congruent with why the client goes there or uses the service.
Yeah.
Right? You use the service to find the right person, whereas the business, a recruitment agency is successful when you just hire a person. It doesn't have to be the right person, it can be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that that misalignment is fundamentally why you have the problems that you do.
But I think that's the hidden hardest thing about recruitment is that misalignment or getting that alignment.
Yeah.
Right. And the longer you work with the client, the more you understand what they want and what they're actually looking for, the more successful you become in working with them. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, look, but I think the key to it is transparency, right?
Yeah.
And also I think the other key is making sure that there is a values alignment. And I think ultimately I've got to be excited about who I'm working with, right?
Yeah.
And why. Yeah. Feel an element of excitement going up my network and saying, hey, I think you should have a look at this. Yeah. And that often means, right, it's businesses that if I look at, it's not until I look under the hood that I go, oh, wow, like there's more to this than what I thought, right? And, it doesn't have to be the kind of the glitz and the glamour and the kind of unicorn. There's a lot of businesses out there that are solving some unique problems that particularly in fintech, fly completely under the radar.
Yeah. It's what I found. Like we, Jonesy and I, obviously co-founders of Assembly, and is we wanted to solve problems. And when we wanted to solve problems for customers, we got a real hit when we solved their problem, right? That was what made us feel good, is when they came in and they said, we want to, do all this complex payment flows and everything. We need a solution to do it. And we'd go, here you go, here's this thing. And we'd go solve it. And oh, wow, we did it, right? And we get that same sort of hit now. And I'm just want to see if you do too, is that when we build a team and they, Friday, for example, goes, oh, we need 15 million to build this, but we can't get enough capital yet. And you help them. Yeah. It's not about setting up the team and going, Ray, we hired 15 people for Friday. It was actually going, we've been part of this journey. We've seen them start and we've seen them actually succeed now. And we sit down and go, isn't that cool? You've got the product, you've got this deal with, you're doing this stuff with NAB and you've invested and you see your business growing and you've grown with them. And that's been really satisfying. Yeah, look, I mean, that absolutely, look, I mean, it is. It's like the biggest thrill that I think I've had, right? It's like, kind of businesses like Revolut. On the flip side to it, being close to a lot of the people who, were going down the neobank path. Yeah. And I think, they got a lot of flack, but I mean, wow, like I just couldn't help but admire the balls, right? To go and start a bank. I mean, it's like, if you think, right, like 2017, right, like that was the scale of the problems and the things that people were trying to do in fintech. And now, it's like I mentioned before, buy now, pay later for school lunches were the things that were getting money behind them. And I think that's, we kind of need that, it's like that moonshot, right? The US, we're going to put a person on the moon by the end of the decade, right? Yeah. And I think Australian fintech started off with these moonshots. We've kind of come into our shell and come into reality. And it's understandable, right? It's like now it's just focusing on survival. But I hope, in the next year or two that we can get back to those kind of big, bold, ambitious. Yeah. Or some reasonable kind of, it's what, I look at fintech and go, is there much more that needs to change in Australia versus, and other markets?
Yeah. Well, the low-hanging fruit's definitely gone, right?
Yeah. Yes, I would love a personal finance assistant to tell me that I drank too much or spent too much on Friday night at the pub and, and for the next 3 weeks now you're not allowed alcohol or something. Yeah. But, and that'll happen with the AI personal assistants and stuff, but there's not, like, if I look at my life right now, I can instantly transfer money I can instantly transfer, whatever amount I want anywhere. I can pay for across my phone, my watch, my laptop, my cards, my kind of, my fingerprint.
Yeah.
Sort of,
I was actually thinking about this morning, right? I was so when I first arrived in Australia, 2004, literally packed up my life, right? And I had a suitcase and a laptop, and I lived in Melbourne for the first year.
Yeah.
And I was staying in a hotel for the first 4 or 5 nights in this little shithole on Little Collins Street called the Victoria, right? Yeah. And I thought it sounded all grand, right? And I booked it. Yeah. And I was thinking, when I arrived, right, I had like a mobile phone, and its most advanced feature was a torch, and it had Snake on it. Right?
Snake game.
I had the Lonely Planet. Australia Lonely Planet was my guide for coming to a new country, right? I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
I had a job. I had a checkbook that I couldn't use, right? So I was trying to put down a deposit for an apartment. Yeah. And I was like, I had to keep drawing cash out. I go set up a bank account. I had to walk into the ANZ on Collins Street, right? Yeah. Like, all of this stuff, right? Like it took me, it only took like 4 or 5 days, but I was thinking, wow, like now, you'd go on TripAdvisor and you'd be like, oh yeah, the Victoria, what a shithole, right? Like, I'll go and book somewhere else. Right? Yeah. But you just didn't have any of those things, right? And like, it's amazing to think in less than 20 years where we are, right? Yeah. And I think, the challenge that you've mentioned there is that a bit like what we've talked about with recruitment, right? We're looking at stuff that's 600 years old and going, how do we digitize this and make it a bit more like efficient, instead of going, why are we using something that's 600 years old? Yeah. Like, how do we rethink what we're actually doing? And I think this is where the kind of moonshots need to come. Yeah. Right? Like the moonshots that we had were like, how do we make something that's 600 years old, like a bank, better? Yeah. It's like, well, there's really not that much more you can do.
No. And in fact, the good thing about our banks, you talked about the GFC before, is we actually have a great banking system in Australia. We didn't get hit by the GFC. We're not getting hit by, the liquidity coverage ratios and the banks having liquidity problems in the US, because every bank has to comply with Basel III, not just the banks of over 250 billion.
There's a lot of challenges that are faced in the industry, but with that comes a lot of opportunities, right? Yeah. And I think probably now is the time to kind of really rethink everybody involved in the ecosystem. VC need to rethink their model and their hypotheses, right? Like everybody needs to have a good rethink about what is it we're doing and what we're kind of, what world are we basing it on.
I love Friday because it's not about being a small business bank account. I love it that it's actually going, well, what's actually the biggest issue with a small business?
Yeah, look, it's like I remember having Mike on the podcast, right? And I was like, wow, mate, it's a small business owner who uses Xero. Yeah. Like, you're saving me a whole lot of pain. Yeah. Right? Well, and distraction and things that
Yeah, and maybe we'll see more stuff like that. Like, so my wife's a great example. Started as a stay-at-home mum, started a small handbag business, designer handbags, getting them made in Italy. Selling a couple of $100 a month now. But can I get her to go see the accountant? Yeah, and there's this fear of going to see the accountant. Do I have a bank account? But she won't go see the accountant. So that's where there's maybe fintech's going. There's merging things like, is there going to be Xero in a bank eventually, or is it just going to be, your bank has to be your accounting platform? Right.
Well, I think this is kind of where I'm seeing a lot of the opportunities is that kind of cost, accounting, all of that automation side, and then on the consumer side, debt collection, credit analysis, credit risk assessment, all of those things, right? Like that's where we're seeing the opportunities.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So I think we're kind of starting to, again, focus on where the problem sets. What are the, rather than, the stuff that's all kind of fluffy, like let's focus on the real problems, because where there's problems, there's profit, right? Like that's the reality.
I want some sort of AI financial advisor every month looking at what I'm doing.
Look, I mean, I remember speaking to Andy at Doe. I think he was one of the very first interviews that I ever did when I had the blog. Yeah. And what he was talking about trying to do with Doe, and it was, and hopefully they can actually do it now with where AI is at.
Yeah.
But that whole premise of, and I think this is where it gets really complex, right? My financial life, having a small business, a mortgage, like all of these different things, right? And it's like, moving money all the time, right? And it's like, what's the most tax effective way of doing that, right? To have something, rather than me going and send an email to my accountant going, hey, I want to pay myself some money. What's the best way to do it, right? I've got this money sitting in the bank. Which account should I put it in?
Yeah.
And how do I,
Should it be a dividend? Should it be a kind of...
Yeah. And look, it's kind of all, I think this is where AI really will come in now. And I think, huge opportunities for, I remember actually we were talking about this during COVID, right?
Yeah.
We've seen this like mini renaissance of innovation because there were big problems that need to be solved fast.
Yeah.
And people were just gone like using Airtable and Typeform and putting stuff together, right? And it's like getting prototypes out super fast.
Yeah.
Over the course of a weekend.
Yeah.
And it was working, right?
Yeah.
And I think we kind of need to get back to that level of urgency around, look, let's just get stuff in customers' hands. Let's just do things, test it, and see if there's an actual, business opportunity there.
On that, we touched on it before we jumped on this, and we talked about the cycle. When do you think, and there will be that flourish of new businesses again at some stage, but we kind of, you explained the cycle before, maybe just go through.
Yes, the cycle 12 months back, I kind of was, being pitched as the harbinger of doom.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was, depressed or anything. It was just that I was seeing all of the signals that I'd seen in the other cycles. And so I'm kind of, recruiters often the canary in the coal mine. We see the things happening before anybody else does. So what people are feeling now, the good news is that you're actually kind of, it's a bit like when you catch the storm. It's a bit like when you catch the flu.
Yeah,
the worst you feel is when you're actually going to be getting over it. Yeah. So I think we've had the kind of the shocks. There's still stuff to rinse out with interest rates. People are going to be feeling that heat with mortgages and spending and stuff. But I think the reality is that what we've seen from the last 12 months from a business perspective is they've been, almost paralyzed and kind of stuck. And they're then, two things are going to happen to make the market go. There's still, we keep hearing about dry powder. I think we're going to see in this next 6 to 12 months, there will be activity. Now, a lot of it will be what I'd say consolidation. We've seen that to an extent so far, which means that, there might be businesses that get bought. There might be distressed businesses that get
or even
acquired
new
and
opportunities.
merged.
Like Marketa pulling out the market is actually a bad thing for Australian businesses. EML, for example, can now pick up those customers.
And we've seen that, right? Like I've got clients who were looking at acquisitions that went out of business and they were like, well, we've just picked up all their customers. The money's flowing to AI.
Yes.
Right. Without a doubt. Right.
AI and green tech.
Yeah. Right. So, and if I look at where a lot of my network have gone, fintech founders have now kind of moved into green tech.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if you look at Singapore, great example of where fintech is kind of the bedrock of all of the other techs that they're working on, which to me kind of suggests that, there are opportunities there, but they're not going to be what we thought the opportunities were 5 years back. So it's not going to be neobanks. Right?
No.
It's not going to be, it's going to be...
Has to be something different. It has to, It's almost what we started to see, though, with crypto coming out, is if you put crypto and fintech together, that there was just things going on. You couldn't understand the people's business models, but they were raising a huge amount of money because they were crypto doing some sort of banking thing, right?
But it's good, right? You got to with
AI, right? You've got sort of banking AI.
Yeah, and I think this is a good thing, right? It's like you have to earn the right for people to give you money to build a business.
Yeah.
And I think this is what people now, we've got to go back to earning the right, and the right comes from, do you have the right people to execute? Are you solving a big enough problem?
Yeah.
Right? And is it something that people, it's going to do some good in the world.
Yeah.
And I think this is where, that's kind of one of I think the silver lining as to what we've got right now is that, it's kind of the cream always rises to the top, right? And I think we're going to see, even if people don't make it this time round, what they would have kind of developed and learned about themselves, get back on the horse and go again.
I mean, that was the same for when I had a business failure back in 2012, right? Because all I knew is that I could build a business that could do $12 million a year in revenue. So, and I had nothing else, so I had to get started.
It's like, the thing is, right? Like, that's something that never leaves you.
Yeah. Because I had no other asset, but I knew how to build a business. Yeah. So I had to go do it again.
Yeah. And like, my kids, right? That's what I want. If there's a gift that I want to give them, right? Like, and it's one of the things I love about the podcast. My kids listen to it, right?
Awesome.
Like, my daughter who's 12, like her idea of an entrepreneur isn't, like a Richard Branson or an Elon Musk. It's like a Simone Joyce or, it's like, she kind of, females to her are synonymous with entrepreneurs, right?
That's awesome.
But the great thing is my son, he's the same as well, right? Like, so it's kind of, I think it's,
bred into that. It probably goes back to what you're saying before, is that with all these tools now, everyone can actually go run their own business now. So we'll probably see that difference of that spread out of them doing their own business, but may not be, like my wife's business, for example, a handbag business, where she can scale it now because she has all the tools she needs to.
Absolutely. Look, and I think I can't think of anything more liberating, right? And being your own boss. Yeah. Having your own destiny in your hands.
The crystal ball going, are we going to see, as you said, there's a lot of power out there. There's obviously a huge amount of money being pumped into AI. I think that's where all the money's going at the moment. If you had your crystal ball, is it 3 months away before we're going to see that? And I kind of always think about it as when we start seeing interest rate drops, everyone's going to get pumped. And where we saw that in the stock exchange last month, where everyone thought that was it after the interest rate rises, and the stock market rallied, right? And it's like, everyone's waiting to see that interest rate drop.
I don't know about you, but I think it's going to be like 2008. I think we're going to be like, and we're going to have like waves.
But
I think it's going to be like this, like from now on. I don't think we're going to see these 7-year cycles anymore. And the reason why is that with technology and communication, like we've seen bank runs in 12 hours.
Yeah.
Right?
You can move that. You don't have to go
15 years ago, that would have taken 3 months.
Well, Basel III, and I think, was it Basel IV? I had to say you had to be able to take a 30-day run on the bank. Everyone can log on to the internet. Everyone has access to the news now, and they weighted the liquidity coverage ratios on the bigger the deposit, the higher the risk, because they were educated, and the small deposits like the mum and dad, tradie business stuff, were uneducated on what was happening.
Yeah.
So they were, that you had to hold $1 to every $20 in the bank account, right? But now they're educated because they get it from right? That's what
So look, I think we're going to see, it's just going to be different, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's not going to go back to how it was.
I don't want to see last year. Last year was crazy. I never want to see that again, like in terms of the job market. That was just insane.
I say never, it will, right? I said it'll never go back in 2009, and it did, right?
Yeah.
But I think we're going to see just different kind of cycles, shorter cycles. Maybe it's a bit more severe, kind of. But if you look at it longer term, it's up, but it might be kind of like that is on the way there. Roller coaster ride would be the best way to put it.
And that's business for you.
Yeah.
And that just, you talked about it before, that decision paralysis is what's happening at the moment. So no one wants to make a decision yet. And they need to see, as you said, there's still a lot of powder there. Yeah. They need to see the signs in the market to actually start making decisions again. And you'll see the hiring pick up and jobs pick up and everything else, right? Do you think that what the market needs to see is an interest rate drop? That's what I'm kind of looking for.
Look, I mean, if you look at the cost of capital, right? We had the same problem in 2010, where the cost of capital went through the roof because credit was really hard to come by.
Yeah.
Credit's going to be hard to come by. But also, if you look at the cost of capital in the last 12 months, it's 10x.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's right? Like, it's crazy, right? Like, so it's, sure, everybody's hoping, praying for it to come down, right? Because it's not just in business, but in households as well, right? Mortgage debt, people, their mortgage repayments are going to double in, the next kind of 6 months.
Yeah, I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking to now about it, but they were saying the sign that mortgage stress is going to happen is the delinquencies in their car payments, because they stopped paying their car first.
Yeah.
And their car payments have doubled in the last 12 months. Delinquencies have doubled.
Yeah.
Meaning that the next thing to go is the mortgages, right? And so the stress is there.
Yeah, look, it's absolutely there. And I think, this is kind of, again, one of the challenges that we've got, what does the RBA have as a tool to try and stop inflation? It's to press the nuclear button, right?
I'm just thinking is that the right way? Because that's actually everyone that has it. Like there's only 40% of the population actually has a mortgage, and it's the people that are actually the lower income people, right? And there's actually a lot of people out there. The wealthy people are getting under stress at the moment. They're actually making record profits still, right?
Yeah,
so it's actually the wrong tool.
Well, that's it. Exactly right. So they're not. It's not stopping spending, and you have to then go, okay, well, is this actually the right, the way to do it? And it's not, right? And but I think the other thing as well is, they've been really impatient. You have to, these things take a lag, right, to have an impact. And, you're not going to see the changes within a month. It's just.
But and China, it was only 6 months ago that they got out of a lockdown, and so the supply of China is going to pick up and help things. The reorganisation of the oil supply is going to help things, right? So there's other things that are going to help bring inflation down other than interest rate hikes. But that's probably another hour podcast.
It probably is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So Dexter, it's been fantastic to host you on your show. As you said, a lot of people have asked about doing it. It's been something I've thought about listening to your podcast, listening to you speak, and so thanks for your time. I've really enjoyed it. And where can people get in touch with you about tier one people and hiring amazing and getting what is it called?
The opportunity description.
Yeah, that's it. I love that.
Yeah. So Twitter, Dexter Cousins, LinkedIn, Dexter Cousins, or you can check out tier1people.com. And where can people find out more about what you do and how do they get in touch?
Connect with me on LinkedIn, Simon Lee, and or simon@patona.com.au. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. If you want to check out part 1 of the special interview that I did with Simon Lee, please follow us on your podcast player, or you can check out our website, tier1people.com. In that show, talk a little bit more about my background, and also the origins of Tier 1 People. If you're coming back, thanks for your support. And if you're new to the show, make sure you give us a follow and please leave us a review. It really helps me in bringing in new guests and also spreading the good word. Until the next episode, keep well. Tier 1 People, leaders in executive search for fintech and the digital economy. We'll help you bring in world-changing leadership talent to build world-changing ventures. And you can find us at tier1people.com.